Hey, I'm Vince Beese, the host of the Early Wins podcast. And on this show, we interview startup founders to uncover their secrets to success closing their first customers. During this 10-minute, three-question episode, you'll gain insights and lessons to help you land deals, find market fit, and chart your path to scalability. Our guest today is Brian Carlson, a co-founder and CEO at Storytime AI. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Vince. Real happy to be here.
So before we get into the questions, tell us a little bit what you're up to these days and what journey you're on.
Sure. I'm on my second startup. My first one was acquired in 2020. My first one was online education business that was working with colleges and universities and eventually K-12s in the corporate space for online learning. My newest one is, and that was a B2B play. This one is a B2C play for right now. Eventually, I think we'll pivot to B2B as well. And the new one I'm working on is called Storytime AI. We're working on personalized on-demand books and videos for kids on an app. Here's representing my
That's a cool
shirt here
t-shirt.
today.
You're gonna have to send me one of those.
Absolutely. Get you some swag here after this.
Well, cool. We're trying to impart wisdom on folks out there that are going through a similar journey. So first question for you is, can you recall back, it could be your current company or previous ventures that you started, your first big customer win and what made it happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll talk about my previous venture that we had the exit on, eThink Education, now Open LMS. I think that the first big win we had was a university out in Washington called St. Martin's University out in Lacey, Washington. And the win we had was early on in the business. It was one of our, it was an important one for us so that we could start to have some referenceable clients. I think the way we got that win was we had deep relationships there. Myself and the founder had come into the business, and prior to that, we'd worked for another company that did complementary services for colleges and universities. And because we had relationships with that college previously, we had a deep understanding of their pain point. So when we got in there, I think that there was an existing competitor that we were going head to head with, which was Blackboard, and there was a couple of different pain points that they were having. One of the ones was related to technical integrations, and we certainly leveraged that to find a solution that would address that pain point, not only at a much better technical solution, but also at a much lower cost.
Okay, so deep relationships there led you to understanding really the deep pain points. Compared to your other deals you did, was it a big revenue tech deal or was it just about the logo acquisition?
It was average at the time. It was good for us, but it certainly wasn't our biggest deal, and that was definitely a part of our strategy. It was to get some small ones at first and work our way up from there.
Were you able to leverage that relationship for case studies or references?
Unquestionably. I mean, that was a big part of when we signed that deal. We actually pretty much had a handshake agreement that they would be available for a lot of marketing related initiatives that we were working on.
So that was one of your first marquee accounts. Now think about like going to market and landing your first 5, 10 customers, whatever that number is that really helped you fine tune your product market fit and your offering and your pricing. And tell us a little bit about what you learned going through that journey of the first, whatever number of new customers it was. What did you take away? And what did you change about your go-to-market motion, your product, all that stuff?
Yeah. I think it's very similar on both journeys. My first business and now my second one, Storytime AI. On the first business, I think that the big thing we learned was flexibility and pivoting. We took a lot of feedback from that first college and found out that there was a number of other pain points we weren't aware of that we could integrate into the solution, things that we weren't initially set out to do. We iterated based on their feedback. So we were open, we were flexible. Some examples of that were they had online education, had also, sort of just started at that point. So they were taking a number of the other processes through the university and wanting to integrate into the online experience. Things like student evaluations, things like assessment, and sometimes there were standards they'd have to align with the curriculum. Those were a couple of the solutions. We found other solutions that we were also able to integrate in. But it wasn't our initial intent to do that. But we were certainly, kind of encouraged by that initial institution and then some of the other first couple that we got in the door. With that, we sort of built a set of differentiators, and then we're able to take that to the market because we listened to the client and iterated accordingly.
What mistakes did you guys make early on?
I think initially, I'm probably making this mistake a little bit right now with Storytime AI as well, and almost purposely making it right now, is that we price too low in the very early stages.
Mm,
I think that's a common mistake, and I think we sometimes, because we were going against a competitor that was overpriced, and we were in the previous business, we were the lower priced, more of an open source option. And right now with Storytime, because we're trying to get traction with our personalized on-demand stories, and we want the price point to not be a barrier to entry, we want to get lots of clients in, so we get lots of feedback. So I think we're deliberately doing it right now, but I know that we're going to have to change that soon. Is that, to some degree, we're selling on price. It's a debate I have right now with my founder, Scott Quinlan, on Storytime, probably weekly, that we really need to be able to get margin to reinvest in the business. We're bootstrapped right now. I bootstrapped the last business prior to exit. We may go out and get funding on this business at some point, which would sort of change the ability for us to get user acquisition maybe up front at a little bit more of a loss, but we can only do that so much right now. So I think we underpriced in the beginning of that business, and now I'm probably doing it a little bit now. I think I'll alter that course sooner in this business, because I think it will change the trajectory for us, specifically if we're able to, and we're starting to do this, reframe the conversation away from price and more over to value. For what we're doing right now, the value we have is, multilingual support, personalized learning,
yeah.
things that I think that are very unique. And I think we're trying to define the category right now. So we're trying to get a lot of user acquisition in the door up front. But at the same time, you need to be able to make sure you have healthy enough margins. Right now, we're sort of breaking even on any
Yeah, there's
acquisitions
certain
that
to
we're
be
getting in the
something to
door.
be said getting your early adopter customers though, right? Like,
Yeah,
you got to get some revenue, but the revenue on your first 10 customers isn't vital. What is important, which is what you're highlighting, is the learnings you get from that, the usage that you get from that, the logos to be able to say we have customers, because you could always adjust after a year, right? Like you could make it very clear to these early adopters that I'm giving you a sweetheart deal for the first year, right? And thank you for joining us in this journey, but we're going to normalize the pricing after year one.
yep, that's exactly right, Vince. Yeah, it's an interesting lesson. I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle, with the pricing conversation. We're doing experiments on pricing for Storytime AI right now, pretty much weekly. And we have different ways with our paywall of setting, different prices for, the same audience, and split it. So
Yeah.
50% are getting one, 50% are getting the other.
Pricing's so funny though. It's because it's like when you get to that point, right? That's where the rubber hits the road. And there's anxiety of like, should I say 500 or should I say 350? It's like, but the point is, I've been doing this my whole life. It's like you always start high and you could see someone's reaction. If you get no pushback, guess what? You priced it too low, right?
Right,
If
right,
you say 1,000 and they're like, oh, whoa, 1,000. Well, what did you think it was going to be? Oh,
right.
750. Okay, we might be able to do so. You know what I mean? So that's the thing I think founders need to recognize is like, if you start high, you can always go lower. You're not, they're not just going to run away. You got to get the feedback on it, right? Test it
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, consumer behavior and the psychology is so interesting because there's perceived value. And I think that, when someone sees something that's too low, they think the value isn't
Yep.
there.
Yep.
And when you put it higher, and then maybe down the road you can offer them a discount if you don't convert through retargeting. And if you have that ability, that's great. And we're setting a lot of that up right now with what we're doing. But when people see a low price up front, sometimes you get a lower conversion rate. It's completely counter to
Exactly.
what you would think would happen.
So, parting words for founders that might be going through a similar journey. What could you share?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly, I think both of the journeys I'm on, we've touched on a couple of interesting points. I think one of the things is land and expand, right? You want to, if you're getting you're talking about small clients in the beginning. We've talked about lower pricing in the beginning. I think that is important. I think you need to be careful. A lot of entrepreneurs, they go out the gate and, they're going for the big client. And I think that what I found is you need to start small, get a foothold if you're going for a big client. Maybe if it's in my previous business, it would have been get a couple of teachers involved, get a free pilot in there, get a department, and then once you've shown value, you can certainly go from there. I think that's one of the big pieces of advice that I've learned over the years. The other piece of advice I think I have is the openness to pivoting. I think everyone talks about, the need to get client feedback, and there's only so many hours in the day. It's very difficult to get that. We've probably pivoted 40 times already in the Storytime AI business over the past year and a half. So I think that it's important to be very open that your original thesis is likely not completely correct on why you think people are going to like your product. And you're going to need to look for other value adds. You're going to look for other niches and use cases that you weren't aware may be smart or may be able to be, your application can be used for. So you would definitely want to be very open and flexible, ready to pivot.
Great advice, Brian. I really appreciate you coming on the Early Wins podcast with us today.
Vince, happy to be here. Great talking to you today.
All right. See you later.
All right. Thanks.